When you're outside in the cold, are you wondering, what are all the animals doing? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods, talking about nature topics one small step at a time. What you can find right outside your front door. Imagine this. No heated homes, no mugs of hot cocoa, no giant fleece-lined slipper boots. You just got your fur, your feather, your instincts, and whatever it is that has let you survive for all these years. We're going to talk about something remarkable. Something that crosses my mind quite a bit is, how does nature keep warm when we have so many tools in place to keep warm? How are animals, plants, insects in the snow, out of the snow, surviving in winter? And once we start noticing their strategies, we sort of see this structure about how they endure. And it's all in many different ways. First thing is that animals have natural built-in winter coats. Some of this strategy has to do with fur, and some of it has to do with feathers, to other types of behavioral changes and other types of clever engineering when it comes to snow and different shelters. So if we take a look first at fur, you think about deer. Deer grow thick winter coats with hollow hairs that trap air inside and insulates. I never realized this until my dad said it when I was younger, is that you don't want a tight coat in winter. You want to be able to create air pockets of warmer air inside of your coat, and that traps warmer air in. And that's what this does. By having hollow fur, this allows them to trap the air inside. They also very often will tend towards darker shades that absorbs more solar warmth. Their skin has protective oils on it, and that'll help them stay dry and warm in wet snow area. While birds, on the other hand, they have a different kind of insulation. Beneath their outer layer of feathers lies what is called down feathers. They're tiny branching structures that capture warm air close to their body. Again, pockets of air. Cold mornings, chickadees, titmice will puff up their little feathers. They look like little marshmallows, and it's called petilio erection, which is the idea is that you're going to trap even more heat inside of these feather structures underneath. So by puffing up, they have more air pockets that will warm up and then keep them warmer. Heck, I have a pet canary, and he does the very same thing at night. He puffs up and, I keep him warm, but, that's their reaction to it. Meanwhile, some reptiles and insects do something entirely different. They go underground, burying underneath the frost line or inside of leaf litter, and avoid lethal surface temperatures that exist to them. We did a podcast about this. You can check it out. It's about hibernation. Some animals will take insulation to a different level. They will slow down and enter hibernation, which drastically reduces their metabolism, living off of their fat stores. And pikas, voles, other small mammals build these complex dens underground and then use those as insulating power to protect themselves. Snow then, on top of their dens, become a natural insulating blanket on top of them. Now, we don't think of it as snow as being something that's insulating, but if you are someone who has been taught snow survival, you will learn how to build the proper kind of den. I had to learn this when I was in Girl Scouts, that if you got trapped out in the snow, that you could stay warm inside of a snow bunker. But it is insulating, and it does protect you, and it can hover close to freezing temperature, which is still too cold for us, but not as cold as the air around, which could be up to 20 degrees colder than what you're getting inside of that den. It could be life-saving to understand it, and there are engineering tricks in place that will help them do it. Some other animals then respond by primarily bigger animals looks to getting fat layers, blubber on their body, and that helps insulate them too. But think about this. Water will pull heat away from a body 25 times faster than air, which is why it's always imperative that if you are in a cold situation, you stay dry. Because if you get wet and you stay wet, you're in a lot of trouble. So getting dry is the most important thing. Believe it or not, if you ever been taught survival, that if you ever do get wet, let's say you fell into a lake and now you're lost in the woods, it is better for you to take your clothes off, dry off next to the fire. Dry your clothes off before putting them on. It's counterintuitive to think that less clothes is better, but what clothes is deadly. And we learn all sorts of things, like cotton is the worst of fabrics to get wet. Tech fabrics tend to do a little bit better. They dry out quicker. And wool. Wool is absolutely the best. If you don't have down, wool is the best type of fabric because it can not lose its heating properties even when it's wet. But marine mammals will do something else entirely. They have something that's blubber. It's not just fat. Blubber is actually dense, flexible, lipid tissue that insulates and stores energy and fuels as well as keeps warm. And it will fuel as long as they need in the winter months. And you think about seals, walruses, whales are swimming in this water, but they're basically swimming inside these thermal flasks of fat lipid stores. And even polar bears, while they have thick black skin underneath their fur, the pale fur absorbs every possible ounce of sunlight. And so it's sort of like a biological solar panel with this combination of black skin and black and white fur. So there's all different kinds of strategies out there, and bears too will put on a tremendous amount of fat so that they can keep warm as well, and then use that fat to feed off of their stores. Boy, I wish I could feed off my fat during winter stores too. But I think that's awesome why you sort of end up feeling like you're craving carbs and wanting to pile on weight a little bit right before winter. I think we have this natural tendency to know that it keeps us warmer, but it also provides fuel when we maybe in ancient times didn't have a harvest coming in. There are also behavioral strategies involved when it comes to surviving in winter. It's not just anatomy alone. Many animals, like I said, reduce their activity to conserve energy. They will go into what we call hibernation, and then they will be able to reduce and conserve all their energy and not need to stay as warm. Others shift their diet to high-calorie winter foods that will fuel internal heat production. Mammals do produce internal heat. We do as well, and other critters like lizards and reptiles do not. Birds will orient themselves towards the winter sun, spread out their wings, or fluff up against the warm sun and try to retain as much heat. Deer, on the other side, will stand broadside against the sun like a solar panel and try to soak in as much heat as they can into those, like I said, fur pieces. And foxes will curl up at night into tight balls and use their thick tail to wrap around their noses and keep warm through just being tucked into themselves. There's a whole hidden world that people don't really know about when it comes to surviving. And this is going to be creating tiny spaces under the snowpack. And that's where we'll find the mice, the voles that run winter highways. And the temperatures stay near freezing, but without the wind, they are able to stay warmer and stay below ground. When you go up on top, you're going to get the wind and the snow is brutal. So all these little miniature winter refuges are happening in your backyard, keeping animals warm throughout the winter months. Some of them will just plainly just huddle together. They have a den or a area where there are birds, and they will stick together. Oftentimes, I will see, I go to this local area that is a hydroelectric dam, and you will see starlings, sparrows, blackbirds, pigeons even, go together on a wire and be packed in together or inside of trees. And so they are keeping warm together by sharing this little microclimate that they're containing themselves. And brown bats will cluster together by the hundreds, and they generate enough warmth to create a sauna-like environment if they're inside of a cave or whatever structure that they are inside. We even think about, and this is not my neck of the woods, but like emperor penguins, they will rotate the huddle to efficiently share energy to make sure that everyone gets some time inside, able to stay warm, and they use the crowd to stay warm in extremely cold conditions. So being a social warmer is a big part of a lot of different animals and birds' mechanism that they have. So when insulation is enough and behavior isn't enough, the animals will turn to their internal furnace. And so they start this shivering, what they call shivering thermogenesis. So tiny birds like chickadees and juncos can double their metabolic rate through rapid muscle shivering. And that's why we shiver. We shiver in order to generate heat so that we're not so cold. There's also non-shivering thermogenesis, and that includes something that is called brown fat. It is found in deer, rodent, and also human, most likely human infants. It's a special kind of fat that is specifically there to generate heat. And we're starting to learn more and more about brown fat and how it also is not as dangerous to us as the regular fat is. Can we convert regular fat to brown fat? Could we make it healthier for people to have more brown fat? And they find that people who live in northern areas are able to keep warmer because they do have more brown fat. And I think that that is why over the years, living up in the North Woods, I was never very cold. And now that I live a little farther south than the north of North Woods, now I'm getting a little bit more cold, and probably because I'm losing a little bit of the brown fat and had it just convert to regular fat. So all mammals have some ability to do this, but in wintertime, those animals rely heavily on brown fat, like I said, which has one specific purpose, which is to generate heat and is not as dangerous as regular fat, also can be used for energy. And as I mentioned before, sometimes animals will change their coat in winter entirely. Snowshoe hares, weasels, and ptarmigans will turn entirely white as the days shorten. And this change isn't cosmetic. It does help them blend in more with the snow and be less of a target, but their coats also become thicker, more dense, and it is better insulation. When you think about white fur reflecting light towards the body and creating a slightly warmer effect, nature never wastes any sort of good opportunity to keep warm. And then when you're even looking at extreme survival of creatures that can't insulate or can't do something with brown fat or solar rising against the energy, think about like wood frogs. They freeze solid. They have blood that allows it to turn towards ice. And they go into the deep of the water. They stop breathing entirely. Their heart stops. Their blood turns to ice. And in spring, when they thaw out, they just hop away. And some birds who overwinter and don't migrate away, they will enter what is called torpor, which is not exactly hibernation, but it is a slowdown of their metabolism. It will drop up to 95%. Their heart rates plummet and will quiet down, and that will keep them safe during the coldest periods of winter. Chickadees will adjust their body temperature during nighttime by up to 12 degrees, which helps them control how much impact the cold air has on them, because a lot of times it's because we're 96 degrees, we go out into 20 degrees. It's a 70-degree difference. It's hard on us. If we could drop our body temperature, it wouldn't be so bad. They also burn through a ton of calories while trying to maintain their heat during cold times, and so they have to eat quite a bit during wintertime in order to keep their temperatures up. And if you think about plants, animals can move, they can migrate, they can dig, they can build structures and dens, they can gain extra fat, but plants, they just sit there. And so what plants, trees, and shrubs will do is they'll enter a stage of dormancy where their internal processes are meant to draw in the water to avoid cellular damage. The buds are wrapped in protective scales in spring, sort of like a bubble wrap type of structure. Some shrubs can photosynthesize under the snow, which means whatever little amount of light gets in, they are able to use that as energy. And some grasses bend, but don't break. My lawn in my backyard, they just bend underneath the snow, and then they're ready to surge back as soon as the snow retreats. Oftentimes, if we're not having a very brutal winter, when the snow melts, the grass is still green, and then it pops right back up again. So plants aren't just surviving winter, they're made for it. Plants that live in the North Woods, they're made to live in the North Woods, and so they're able to withstand it. And when it comes to evergreens, like think about pine trees, that's why we have so many pine trees, is that they never lose their green leaves. They are protected in many different ways, but that allows them to use those structures to energize and solarize all year long. So whether or not you're insulating or storing fat, whether or not you have fur or feathers or blubber or brown fat on you, or you're great at making dens and bunkers and shelters for yourself, or you can shift your behavior so that you can huddle, reduce activity, and go into a state of torpor. There's all sorts of different ways that everything uses to survive these winters. We try very hard to learn from them because we want to know how to create better human tech. We don't want to endanger animals because of down. Down is a fantastic mechanism that we can build coats with that are very warm, and if they get wet, they actually retain much of their heating principles to them. We would like to know exactly how to design our own energy-efficient structures for coats, clothing, buildings. So we do better at winter too. So we even tried to learn a few lessons from them as well. But it's a season, for animals just as much as it is for plants. We want to learn more about how animals do it because we hope to do better and we hope to just understand them a little bit better as well. So the idea is if you're looking out in your backyard, take a look around. Look in the trees. Do you see birds like chickadees and juncos puffing up into little bitty orbs of balls at feeders? They're trying to keep warm. Do you see rabbits tucked behind shrubs and facing the morning sun, trying to get as much sun? Do you see cardinals catching the sunlight and trying to get as much sun as they can on bright, sunny, calm days? Do you see squirrels curled up in kind of leafy areas, which is surprisingly warm as well? They have very messy nests, but you'll see the squirrels kind of tidied up around there. And when it's cold, they kind of huddle together, and when it gets warmer, they go out and they look for food. Or do you see animals coming out of little shadowy tunnels with tiny little entrances where maybe voles and other animals, usually around the base of trees, are coming in and out? They will pick warmer days to come out and go look for food, and then they stay back in their dens and go into torpor on days when it is too cold to go outside. So they sort of balance it out. Winter settles in, and most of us wonder, how in the world do the animals stay warm? But there are so many strategies out there that they use, whether it's deep in the ground, high in the pine trees, or even frozen in a pond. Life adapts and to every kind of ecology around it. There are things that are meant to be in warm areas, and there's animals and birds and plants that are meant to be in cold areas. And all these things are engineered to survive. They're built for winter. And so you don't have to worry about them so much. I remember as a kid, I used to worry about them all the time. They're built for it. The winter is a season that is something that they have lived with and will continue to live with, and they have strategies involved. So when you're walking outside in the wintertime, if you have snow or colder temperatures, see if you can notice animals and birds doing various interesting things to survive. I know my bird, now that we're in wintertime, he gets mad at me because the sun is only out for so long, and he wants me to get up at the crack of dawn and open up his window so that he can soak in those warm winter sun rays coming through the window. He knows that is part of his survival. All right, everyone, thanks so much. Appreciate you watching and listening. You can leave comments here. Have you noticed animals trying to survive in winter? What techniques do they do that you've seen around you? You're welcome to email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com, and I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much, and have a great day.